Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another lecture on human factors engineering. We were on module 1, that is body centered or physical ergonomics, and our today's topic is work physiology, that is topic 1-6. These are the references that I consulted to prepare these slides. So the book Engineering Physiology, then an introduction to human factors engineering, introduction to human factors and ergonomics, that is our textbook, a guide to human factors and ergonomics, that is also one of the reference books. So you can refer to these books for more details. Today's lecture is divided into 4 parts. In part A, we will discuss muscle structure and muscular control. So learning objectives for part A are to understand the basic structure of skeletal muscle, how a skeletal muscle contracts, how these muscles work in pair, and how the nervous system controls the muscles. So we discussed this in one of the previous lectures as well, that there are 3 types of muscles in humans. They are smooth muscles. Skeletal muscles are also called striated muscles. Smooth muscles control the opening of and flow in blood vessels or other passages in the body, like your intestines. Cardiac muscles are the muscles of your heart. So they help heart pump blood through the vascular system. So these are very unique muscles that make up your heart as a whole. And finally, we have skeletal muscles. They are also called striated or voluntary muscles. They control body locomotion and posture. So these are the muscles that are attached to the skeletal system. So they are attached to your bones. In ergonomics, skeletal muscles are of primary interest since they move the segments of the human body and generate energy for exertion to outside objects. So we are interested in this third type, that is the skeletal muscles. These muscles work in pair. So in human body, muscles are arranged in a functional pair where an opponent counteracts the contracting muscle. So one muscle or a group of synergistic muscles flexes around an articulation that is around a joint, while the other extends as is shown in this figure. So the active muscle is called the agonist and the opposing one is called antagonist. So for example, if you are flexing your forearm, then this your biceps muscles will contract. So these triceps will relax, and vice versa. So they act in pair. So this is just a terminology that we must keep in mind that might be helpful when you are reading the text. So in this case, if you are flexing your forearm, the biceps are the agonist muscles and triceps are the antagonist. The skeletal muscle has a beautiful structure, a layer by layer structure. So if this is the muscle as a whole, it consists of fascicles. Fascicles are actually the bundles of fibers. So each fascicle consists of a number of fibers, as you can see. So as a whole, this is the muscle. So you can see, for example, different fascicles. Then each fascicle consists of different fibers, and fiber further consists of bundles of what we call myofibrils, or simply fibril. Now, myofibril further consists of 2 proteins, actin, and myosin. So these are also arranged layer by layer. So one such layer is called sarcomere. So there is one sarcomere between two Z lines. So what happens is that these actin and myosin slide along each other, their distance decreases. So as they contract, so does these myofibril. So once this myofibril, for example, contracts, so does the fibers and finally the fascicles. So as a whole, your muscle contracts or relax. So depending upon whether the actin and myosin are moving towards each other or away from each other. So that is called sliding filament theory. So depending upon the instructions that the muscle receives from the nervous system, either muscle contracts or relax. So actual movement is taking place at this level, at the sarcomere level, that is between actin and myosin, and that then of course that movement converts into the movements of the higher order elements of the muscle, that is myofibril, and then the fibers, and finally fascicles, and as a whole the muscle moves. So once the muscle moves, it through the tendon, it moves the relevant bone, and relevant movement actually takes place at the joint. So this is the cycle that actually takes place. So this is the schematic of the myofilaments. Actin and myosin are collectively called myofilaments. So myo means actually muscle. So you can see the Z lines. This thick protein is myosin, the thin one is actin. Energy for the movement, of course, comes from the food stuff that converts into energy through the metabolism. So these myofilaments, once they move towards each other, the muscle contracts, and opposite happens when the muscle relaxes. So the actual phenomena is happening at this level. So that is the basic idea about the movement of skeletal muscles. And in some cases, of course, muscles can move beyond their relaxed position, and they can stretch as well. So in this way, these proteins are, of course, stretching. So does myofibril stretch, then fibers stretch, the fascicle stretch, and so on. So both possibilities are there. That is the sliding filament theory. And again, the energy for this movement, of course, comes from the food stuff. And there is, of course, some energy stored in muscles as well. So depending upon the nature of the task, whether the local energy is sufficient for certain movement or some additional energy is required. So we will watch a simple video to understand the structure of skeletal muscle and how the movement takes place in muscles. So as I mentioned that the movement of muscles is controlled by the nervous system. So nervous system has actually two types: central nervous system, or the CNS, as is mentioned here, and the second is the peripheral nervous system. So that further has two types: somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. So central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord, and you can see somatic nervous system actually is the one that controls the movements of different muscles in the body. So that is of our interest. The second one, that is the part of peripheral nervous system. Another part of peripheral nervous system is autonomic nervous system, and you can see that that actually is related to the vital organs of your body, so heart and lungs and so on. So we will briefly see these types of nervous systems. So we have a central nervous system, or CNS, and peripheral nervous system, or PNS. And the central nervous system is actually having what we have as the afferent neurons, and peripheral nervous system as efferent neurons. So the CNS comprises the brain and spinal cord. So as we saw in the previous slide, it consists of two main parts: brain and spinal cord. So that is your CNS. It is the body's control center, receiving and transmitting information via the peripheral nervous system. So you can say that the peripheral nervous system is sort of a subordinate of CNS, and CNS through PNS controls different body parts by sending and receiving different types of information. So the CNS comprises the nerve cells that are actually the sensory neurons. So they convey information from receptors in the body to the CNS. So for example, if you touch something that is hard, so some information from your skin receptors is transmitted to the brain that you have touched something that is having high temperature. So that is done through these sensory neurons. The peripheral nervous system comprises all of the nerves and nerve processes that connect the CNS with the receptor cells, muscles, and glands. So that is, as I mentioned, that sort of subordinate of CNS. And it has what we call efferent or motor neurons. So motor means movement. So they convey information from the CNS to the muscles and glands, just opposite to the sensory neurons. So sensory neurons convey information from the receptors to the CNS, and efferent neurons, or the motor neurons, do just the opposite. They convey information from the CNS to the muscles and glands, and of course there some action takes place. So there is secretion of some hormones or some movement of the muscle, and that takes place as a result of the information sent by these. Peripheral nervous system has further two types, and the somatic nervous system. This nervous system is under a voluntary control, and this autonomic nervous system, as the name implies, is not under voluntary control. So it is involuntary or unconscious, under involuntary or unconscious control. So somatic nervous system also has, of course, both of these are the part of peripheral nervous system, these two. So both have actually motor neurons. But this somatic nervous system has motor neurons that conduct impulses from CNS to skeletal muscles. So this nervous system is actually coordinating with your skeletal muscles. So it is under conscious control. The autonomic nervous system also has motor neurons, but they convey impulses away from CNS to smooth muscle tissue. That is, for example, the muscles surrounding your arteries, for example, the heart and glands. So it is under involuntary control. So if you are feeling, for example, depressed, so you cry, so uh, your tears are just an example of the glands that are secreted. Uh, they are under involuntary control, and they are part of this system is part of autonomic nervous system. So this autonomic nervous system has two types: parasympathetic and sympathetic. We will discuss parasympathetic nervous system first, because this is the system that is active under normal situations. So this comprises a nerve that adjusts bodily activity involuntarily. So this is the part of autonomic nervous system. So bodily activities are adjusted involuntarily, opposing the sympathetic system. So broadly, the parasympathetic system takes over during the periods of relaxation, just like now you're sitting. So practically your parasympathetic nervous system is in action. The sympathetic nervous system comprises the nerve that adjusts bodily activity involuntarily. So this is common with the parasympathetic nervous system because both are the part of autonomic nervous system. And it opposes the parasympathetic system. The sympathetic system is dominant during the times of stress. So in order to bring the body under normal state, it takes on the parasympathetic nervous system, and practically different glands, depending upon the situation, are secreted to to release that stress. And we have seen this figure repeatedly. I hope you recall this is your vertebra as a whole. These are different processes or projections through which your muscles and ligaments attach, and through this foramen or opening on the lateral side of your vertebra passes the spinal cord. So this is the spinal cord, and on the left and right of the spinal cord, you can see the nerve roots in pair. They emerge in pair, one on the left and one on the right. And they further consist of two components. You can see that this nerve root has further two components, this one and this one. Same is to the nerve root on the other side. So their designation is the same. So just like we had the designation for the vertebra, so we had C1 vertebra, C2, for example, T1 and T2, and so on. So they have the same designation, but they emerge in the form of pairs. So there will be a C1 pair, C2 pair, C3 pair, and so on. So you can see here, from here, that this is again your spinal cord, this thing that is shown here. And two nerve bundles emerge from the cord to the left and the right. So this one on the right and this one on the left. Each passes through an intervertebral foramen, this opening through which the spinal cord and the resulting nerve roots are passing. These lateral nerve bundles are often called the nerve roots. So one of them is the sensory root, the other is motor, just like we discussed in the previous slide. And same about the nerve root on the other side, that is, one of them is sensory, the other is the motor. So in simple words, you can see that one of these pairs, for example, this one, conveys information, say, to the right side of the body. As we discussed, that the human body is symmetric around the medial plane. And this pair connects to the relevant body part on the left side. For example, your lumbar nerve roots connect to your legs, and some in your thoracic region connect to your abdomen and the chest, and so on. So one of the pair is sort of conveying information to the right side of the body, relevant portion of the right side of the body, and the other is conveying information to the relevant left side of the body. So as a whole, we have a closed loop systems. So sensory nerves actually convey information from the body to the CNS, and then depending upon the situation, CNS conveys information through motor neurons to the relevant part of the body. So this is just like a closed loop. So in this segment, we discuss basic structure of skeletal muscle, the sliding filament theory, types of nervous system, the CNS and PNS. And this PNS or peripheral nervous system further consists of two subsystems, somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. And autonomic nervous system further comprises sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. In the next segment, we will discuss very briefly the cardiovascular and respiratory systems and digestive system, how they work in combination, and what are the ergonomic implications. Thank you.